Hello, Karen. Oh, you're muted.
How you doing?
Good, good. We just ran out of the house and did a few errands. It's so nice out.
Oh, I know.
Oh my God, I better shut my
Every
front
day.
door. My dog.
This would be worse if it was in the pits of winter.
Right?
Really go nuts.
Okay.
All right. Let's see.
What's up here?
Oh, were you able to get the George Couros flyer
Yep.
up to go up at the end? Yeah, that'll be at the tail end. Hi, Felicia. Felicia's coming on.
Sorry about that. I had the mute on. Hello, everyone.
It's quite all right.
My work provided device was giving me a hard time. I apologize. I would have been on sooner.
That's okay.
All right. I am just going to go shut my front door so my
Yep.
dog doesn't bark through this whole thing.
Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. Is that a background or that's your real office, right?
Yes, it's my real office, although
Yeah.
I see my messy heater in the corner. I'm going to go try to move that out of view.
Oh, it all looks really nice. You look
It would
really.
be
everybody
better if
looks
I
nice.
actually took time to clean, but
Oh God, oh, yeah, that's all right. That's okay. Felicia's in San Francisco, so she's good. Yep.
I had a Zoom call on Mother's Day with my mother and my aunts and, a whole family call. And it had Happy Mother's Day on it when I first logged on. So I was scrambling like, oh.
Yeah. All right.
I was supposed to have been in San Francisco in April.
Really?
Aw.
Next time, right?
Conference or vacation?
Family vacation, taking our
Yeah.
younger son. Our older one is in college, so we didn't know he would be home. It turns out he was home.
Yeah.
But so it would have been hard to say, oh, we're taking your younger brother, but you got to
Right.
So anyway, yeah, next time maybe.
For another time.
Yep.
Here's Harry.
Hi, Harry. It's my bud. You are muted, my friend. You are muted. Nope, there you
Hi
go.
there.
Hi.
Okay.
Got a different background every time.
Yeah, change it up.
Just a little, tiny personal note here. I've been trying for 3 days on the phone to get in touch with the Hudson Theater in New York City because I bought like 5 theater tickets to Plaza Suite for me and my girlfriends a while ago. Yeah, but so it was June 10th, and first they didn't know if it was totally, but we knew we weren't going anyway. So it's canceled, but they automatically sign you up with tickets for a year from now. And we don't want that. We want a refund. So good luck trying to call the number and get the theater. And wouldn't you know, they're calling me back right now. So if Michelle, I can't miss this. I've been trying. Can you
We
just get them
understand.
started on the opening bit and I'll be right back.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so I will go through my intro, and that will include a screen share. I'm going to test it out on you all to make sure it's working. All right, so we'll start with this. I'm going to be behind the scenes. So I'll read the intro, and then we're going to go through a few technical suggestions. And then I am going to show everyone where they can find, oops, let me pull it up though. There it is, okay. So I'm gonna show everyone where they can find the SAANYS Connect resources. We'll go over that. And then we're gonna do a quick note from our sponsor. And that will be Castle Learning. And then I'm going to turn it over to Karen. And she's going to go through, and I think she sent everybody the outline, right?
She did.
Okay, so you have the order of what we're going to do there. So Elizabeth, you're up first, and then at some point I'm just going to show the YouTube video, not the video itself, just the fact that it's up there.
So just to
So
make sure
according
we're
to
going,
the agenda, I'm up first, I think.
right. Yeah, it goes Cindy and
Right,
then
right, right.
Harry. Then
Yep.
me.
Yep, I was looking at the intro. She has you listed first as the intro. Hi, Cindy.
Hi.
Okay. Cindy, is there anything you need for me to put up on the screen as we're speaking?
I do not.
Okay, that's good with me because we got enough here to launch. Okay,
Hi,
so
guys.
let's see, we got Cindy, Harry, and Harry, I have your handouts here as well. And they're also posted on the website already. So, we'll just show folks that, we have this available, not to go through it in too much detail, but just to, talk about that a little bit, and I'll
I did it.
direct them to the website. Okay. So we're just going through some of the on-screen things we need to do, Karen.
Okay.
Everyone's
Can I
got-
just say, I just have to say this because it's been so hard to do. I just got a refund for $553 that I've been trying to get through to for like three to 5 days. I couldn't miss that. I'm so happy about that. So yay. And sorry I left for a minute, but just we'll pick up wherever you left off. That's just a great feeling. Okay. Thank you. Hi, Cindy. Okay, where were you, Michelle? Sorry.
I was just running through my share screens and making sure I had everybody's items. And I think we're fine.
Okay.
And we're just looking at the order. I was looking at the order. You had things in the welcome, but then I noticed obviously Cindy, Harry, Elizabeth, Felicia.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to go exactly by what I sent everyone today, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I think I'm good on everything we need to show, Karen. So as far as my
That's
stuff,
great.
I'm good.
So Michelle and I, always have a couple of good conversations around the logistics part and really everything before we even get to this point. And I was very happy that everyone sent really good resources. And there are a couple of different kinds of resources. I contributed an article too, and Cindy had an article, and everyone contributed to it. But there were two actual tools in the resources that I really wanted people to see and know they could access with our other resources. And so Michelle probably shared with you, Harry, when you are explaining kind of the process and decisions in Clarkstown, Michelle's going to have up on the screen the document that you sent, like the 2-page document, so people can see it. We don't expect you to walk us through every detail of it, but it'll be up there. And if you want to say page up or something, feel free. Is that okay, Harry?
Yes.
Okay, so that's going to be one document that's actually up on the screen. We very much want people to know it's there for their review with our resources. And I know when I came back from the phone call, Elizabeth, we're going to put up the cover slide of the cover still of your video so that people kind of know it's there, they can access it with your permission, so they know they have your permission and it's all good. And that will be great. And all of the other resources are up there too, but those two we're actually going to put up. So that was good. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts? I know that I feel much safer when I have what I sent to you this morning. But I'm also very comfortable, and our panels have been very comfortable in leaving the script. You know what I mean? Like if there are other follow-up questions, we're good with that. So this is just kind of my security blanket, what I sent you this morning. But I hope, you take any opportunity you would like to follow up with a question to one of your colleagues on the screen or off the screen, when we give a question from our attendees too. So, I really want you to feel that we're not rigidly attached to this, but it definitely is the guide built around the really good questions that you shared with me. So is that okay with everybody? It looked all right? All right, that's good. Okay.
I would prefer to be so scripted that we are not spontaneous and no smiles.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I know, that's just you, Cindy,
Yes.
I know, that's just you. All right, so I think we're good, unless you do have any other questions. It's 2:40. Michelle, do you want to,
Yeah, I'm going to share screen now. And that way, if people log on early, they're just seeing seeing our cover slides. So that's good.
okay.
Share that. Okay. Are you seeing that?
Yep,
Yep.
Yes.
yep.
All right. Great.
And please, if any of you tweet, please feel free to tweet anything and everything, about our session and, for our session today. The more of that we can do, the better.
How many have registered, Karen?
I think something like 241 at last count, which probably means we'll get, who knows, 120-ish.
Okay, we usually get
It's a good, healthy number to start with, especially since this one was really billed for secondary leaders. Yeah. Okay, who has a Zoom tip for me on how I can look like I'm looking straight into the camera? Should I be raising my screen up? Am I not looking right at my camera? I'm not going to do it now, but this is something I grapple with. I'd like, some of you look right in. You look straight. Elizabeth, you look straight. Michelle, you look straight. Harry's straight. Felicia, you're a little off to the side like I am, but
I have two devices in front of me right now. My like I said, I was having trouble with the original device.
Yeah.
That has my notes on it. That would allow me to look straight, but the
Yep. Cindy went out of my view, but she's right down there. She always looks straight. But is there a trick to it? Am I not looking right at my camera? Have any of you discovered this?
No, I just play with it. My trouble I have is my monitor is Mammoth and the Giant Mac, so the camera is at the top. So I always feel like straining my neck and looking up and
right.
But it's trial and error.
Yeah. I also think like right now on my screen is the cover slide, and all of your pictures are down the right-hand column rather than being, right, Cindy? Rather than being in front of my face.
Yeah, it's because
I'm really looking at you over to the right, which won't be the case throughout the whole conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trick is to remember to look at your camera and not necessarily the other people in the slides.
Right.
Because
that's right. Yeah, that is the trick, I think.
And it's hard because your natural instinct is to talk to somebody face to face.
Right, and it's also a little harder because when we have regular Zoom meetings, I feel like I can do that easily, but I am reading kind of along to know what I'm doing next and reading the chat bar. So I think I look very sideways, but oh well. But I will tell you, I did see this one little video by someone, and she must be a real pro at all of this because she was sharing some things about, the visuals and what little tricks you can do. And her whole thing, the simplest thing was that make the light come to your face rather than from behind you. And my desk here at home used to be a whole different way. And the light was coming from my window, which is now ahead of me. So I turned the whole thing all around, and that made a much better difference. That to me was the most valuable visual thing that I've learned in terms of little tips. But
yeah, that's a good one. I haven't figured out how to turn my desk around.
I turned
stuck in the guest room next to the bed.
Yep. So the space doesn't even fit all my furniture now like it used to, but At least I can do Zoom meetings for this experience. So, anything new anywhere in your world of school or anything else where you're coming from? It's been another week where I don't know about you, but I'm waiting to hear some good news. Really good. I'm waiting to hear some good news. I'm getting more anxious by the day in terms of September.
That would be nice. Good news would be nice. You know what I'd like to know right now is that we could bring kids in the summer.
Yeah, that would be good.
Then I feel like we would have a little preparation, a little trial to see
Yep.
how the distancing goes and how the hallway traffic goes and
Yeah,
busing and cleaning of buses.
yep.
It's interesting if you follow, because one of the things I have to do is follow the governor's press conferences every day. And this illness in children though, serious,
That's
absolutely, but he keeps on building on it every day. And I'm wondering,
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be so sarcastic here but that's not the right word, but I have a feeling he's laying the groundwork for something to say that we're not ready for.
Cindy, that was my sense too. Yeah.
That'll affect, my son's usually in extended year summer program, so we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with that.
But you're right, Elizabeth, it would be a good trial period. No, it wouldn't be great, but at least it would give us a point in time to try some things.
We would love it. We would love the opportunity to have kids back with us. And we do need, and we need to start showing people that it's going to be okay. Because at some point we're going to be back. And whatever the small groups look like or the distancing, and certainly we want it to be safe. And there are far smarter people in terms of, medical advice than what we can provide. We just know we'd like to provide education in person to whatever extent we're allowed to.
Yep.
Have any
People,
of you
go
started-
ahead, Sid.
Have any of you started to accumulate products? Or have tried, because I'm wondering if next week when we have a meeting with state ed, we want to push them a little bit on whether they've started to accumulate testing for school districts or what they're doing to broker. I mean, I know it's through the county health departments, but that may or may not go well depending on what county you're in. Have any of you started to acquire PPEs or?
Working on PPEs, and in fact, I need to kind of press our CFO on it again. I was hoping to get really a bunch of face shields for our teachers. They make some inexpensive face shields. And for whatever reason in my mind, I want to try out having, especially our primary teachers, have face shields, because there's something about sending your 5 or 6 year old off to somebody who you can only see, this much of.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the idea of that teachers having the choice too, because you can, the face shields, as I see them, could potentially give you a headache, depending on how you wear it. And I think you may need to go back and forth. But if you're teaching phonics and vowel sounds, I don't know how you do that through a face mask. Certainly social distancing would help, but I'd like to be able to try out some. And I'm really worried about the supply chain for that stuff.
Yeah.
So we have already ordered custom PPD masks for all of the kids and the teachers, but we don't have them yet. So I feel the way you do, the same as I hope that they're going to be able to supply them.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, no joke. I bought a product the other day. It is a hat. It's I think it's more popular in Asia. It's a hat that looks like a fisherman hat, a beach hat. It's for women, black, face shield. I can see wearing it all summer. The hats, they're kind of cute, I have to say. And they have baseball caps too. And I'm sure they'll be making them with our school logos all over them, and somebody will be making $10 zillion doing
Right.
that. But
The old
So folks are
transparencies
starting
are
to-
new.
yeah,
Transparencies are coming back again, because really just to be used as that face shield material.
right.
Karen, I wonder if you drag your chat box up by closer to your video camera, if you'll look like you're talking straight ahead. Like, I don't mean your chat box. I mean your video, where you can, the thumbnail where you see all of us.
Yeah,
If you
Hollywood
drag
Squares.
that.
better. I just did it. Is that better? That's better. I forgot I could even do that. Thank you. That's great. That's good.
I'll have to look for one of those hats.
Yeah, if you look up face shield hat, Amazon, everywhere, baseball caps, beach hats. Yeah.
Was it delivered?
Not yet. It was only, the one I got was only $11.59. It's black, all colors. My daughter's like, I want, I'll take the pink baseball cap.
Mhm.
Okay.
Plus, Elizabeth, to your point of the transparency, that would be something I saw, that'd be really good for kids with visual impairments
It would.
or hearing impairments or anything. I mean, kids, people who rely on a lot of visual clues.
Right.
Yep. One thing I really feel sorry about, one of many, with our wonderful healthcare providers who are really in the thick of it, is the discomfort, of what they are wearing when they're working, the marks literally left by those face shields, and masks, the difficulty breathing. I mean, even when I go to the grocery store, it's annoying. My glasses are fogging up and it just doesn't feel natural or good to breathe that way. But what they have to endure under those circumstances, I think it's hard to imagine. Getting a lot of people in.
Excuse me.
Bless
Hi,
you.
Harry.
Hi. We have 10 minutes until start, so if anyone needs to go anywhere to do anything and come back, we have time. Otherwise, we'll just wait for about 10 minutes.
Just gonna get my document.
Go right ahead. And I think we mentioned it in our meeting the other day, or Michelle did now, but we are very grateful for our sponsors at SAANYS, and we are having our sponsors do 1 minute commercials, messages, I should say, at the beginning of these that Michelle will run. So we could expect that. I think we're all pretty familiar with Castle Learning, who's our sponsor today. They've been doing this a long time, since I was in a classroom almost. It's scary. They were pretty much ahead of this game. Michelle, are you on right now? I think she stepped away a minute.
Karen,
Yes,
just to be sure, you can still see the slides, right?
yes, I can.
Okay.
Um, Yep, and just a little note here. Sometimes we all have glitches. My internet can go down. If my internet goes down, Michelle, could you continue with the questions according to the script? Or Cindy, would you like to do that? Just in case, if my internet just goes kaputski, it can happen. Who takes over as facilitator, Cindy or Michelle?
Either one, I can do that, like yeah, I can do it. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Cindy, you're
Yep.
muted.
I've
Yep.
got your script right in front of me. It's fine.
That's
Okay.
great, because I don't have your script, Michelle, but I can,
Okay.
but I can fill in with content if need be.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just
Okay.
watch the chat panel, because Karen does that too. So
Yep.
for some reason we lose you.
All right, but Michelle, you have the outline, so.
Yep, I
you know,
do.
Like
Yeah,
I said, anybody's internet can crash, so.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yep, we've lived it. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I've noticed a few comments in the chat box. Could you send me a cell number? I might be able to call you in regard to the governor's advisory group. And also, will this presentation be available during or after the discussion?
Okay.
Felicia, that chat about the governor's group was me privately to you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. You just might want to watch what you say on the chat ones.
You know what I mean?
Michelle, just a quick question.
Yep.
Right now, my chat bar is in the middle of my screen.
Okay.
When you take the slide down, will it go to its usual place off to the right?
It can, or even in the chat bar at the bottom, you can see there's a little button and it says merge into your screen, but you can move that around. You see, mine's not
I'm
up
trying.
right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to slide it around. It's not
Not,
happy. Okay.
let me pull up my chat. Hold on. Yeah, my chat bar is not visible, but yeah, there might be 3 little dots at the bottom right of your chat bar.
Yeah.
And I think it says there's merge into your screen or merge into your,
Yeah. No, usually it's over to the right, but I only have save chat on the 3 little dots there. Oh, well, it's okay.
yeah, you should be able to move it around. Maybe it's just because I'm screen sharing.
Okay. Yeah.
It's about 3 o'clock, so we'll get going.
Mhm.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third session of SAANYS Connect, a new virtual way to learn and share on the topics most vital to school leaders during the current crisis and beyond. Today's topic is grading and graduation requirements. My name is Michelle Hebert, Director of Communications here at SAANYS, and I have just a few housekeeping items to mention before we move ahead. First, you'll notice I've already placed you in mute mode. We have nearly 200 people in this session, so in order to avoid a lot of background noise, I'll ask that you remain in mute mode, and we'll use the chat panel for comments and questions. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. When you hear a moderator read your question, you may be asked to unmute yourself at that time to participate in the conversation. Just please remember to remute yourself when you're done speaking. You can also use the chat room to message me privately with any technical issues you may be having. And you'll notice I'm listed as host under the name Michelle, so just send me a private chat. Third, I would suggest placing your screen in speaker view mode. This will place whomever is speaking in the large main screen rather than the Brady Bunch view. And you'll see the option to change that in the upper right corner if you're on a desktop. Lastly, this session is being recorded and will be placed on the SAANYS website along with previous sessions of SAANYS Connect and many corresponding resources. So let me just take a minute to show you where you'll find that on the SAANYS website. So hopefully you're seeing my internet page here. And what you'll do is if you go to the SAANYS website, you can go to saanys.org, PD Mentoring, SAANYS Connect. And here you'll see each edition is recorded and corresponding resources will be under the recording. For this particular session, we already have some great resources up, so that's great. So one more thing, before we begin, I would like to recognize our sponsor, Castle Learning. We greatly appreciate their support and all the support they have provided to districts during this time. So if you would, we'll just take a 1 minute to listen to a message from Castle Learning.
Everyone, this is Scott Fisher from Castle Learning. It goes without saying, but the last 6 to 8 weeks have turned all our lives in and out of education upside down. We couldn't be prouder that so many of you have chosen Castle Learning to help navigate this new world of exclusive virtual instruction and assessment. Because of this significant increase in volume, we have added extensive resources to help make sure your teachers and students are receiving the best user experience possible. We are better together and remain committed to helping our friends in New York navigate through these challenging times. We will continue to learn alongside of you and promise to maintain the level of quality content and support you've come to trust from Castle Learning. For those of you that don't have a solid virtual platform for instruction and assessment, Castle Learning is offering complimentary access through the end of June 2020. I personally want to thank you and your teachers for all the effort, commitment, and understanding to helping students through this crisis. Have a positive virtual meeting today.
Okay, so thank you to to Scott and for being our sponsor. Now I'm going to turn this over to Karen Bronson, our Director of Professional Learning.
Thank you, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our SAANYS Connect panel today. I'm Karen Bronson, SAANYS Director of Professional Learning, and I will be facilitating the panel. The purpose of these conversations is to support our school leaders and communities by bringing the combined expertise of guests and practitioner members together to share their experience on topics of urgent importance to educators like you all over New York State. I would like to thank our guests for taking the time when, like you, the demands on them both personally and professionally have never been greater. So please let me welcome Dr. Elizabeth Wood, Deputy Superintendent, Shenendehowa Central School. Elizabeth, thank you for being here. Dr. Cindy Gallagher, SAANYS Director of Government Relations. Cindy. Dr. Harry Leonardatos, Principal of Clarkstown High School North. Welcome, Harry, and thank you. And Felicia Thomas Williams, Principal of West Middle School in the Brentwood Union Free School District. Felicia has also been selected as the New York State Secondary Principal of the Year by SAANYS and will represent New York as the NASSP New York State Principal of the Year. Congratulations, Felicia, and thank you again, everyone, for being here today. I think it's fair to say that the question of whether and how students will be graded at the end of the school year has seemed important and not that important, depending on what kind of day perhaps the world is having through this experience. But it certainly has brought up many questions, resulted in a number of variations, and highlighted inequities that exist, as well as leading us to think about the very nature of traditional grading. Some would say that is long overdue, and what changes we might see going forward. Today's focus will be on the processes and decisions that some schools have made regarding grading and graduation requirements. As Michelle said, you will have the opportunity to ask questions or share your own examples. So please post questions and comments in the chat bar. We'll take as many throughout the conversation and after the panelists answer some questions as time will allow. I'd like to get started by asking Cindy if she could begin by just reviewing, let's say, the greater context in our state, which informed discussions on grading and graduation during the COVID crisis up to this point. So Cindy, if you could give us a little context, that would be great.
Well, I'll try, Karen. Thank you very much. It is so nice to see faces instead of my basil plants, which don't seem to be doing much action today. But let me try to put this a little bit in context. I think today's conversation on grading is extremely timely. And I say that knowing full well that there are many districts and some of you whose policy and what you're going to do on grading for the fourth quarter has been buttoned up and is all decided. And there are other districts who are in the process and trying to come to grips with what will be done. And I say it's timely because no matter where you are right now, I have a feeling that this conversation on grading is going to be with us probably in the summer, but more than likely in the fall. And I would even propose that it's going to be with us for about another year and a half. Because if we think about what may come in the fall, and if it is a hybrid system, what I think about is whether the grading scheme that you came up for the fourth quarter, was that consistent with your district policy, or was it in fact a process decided to accommodate our immediate crises? And the same I could say for a hybrid situation in the fall or in the spring or however many months this goes on in terms of what we have to adjust to. Will the grading policies that are in place for your district that really reflect your community values, is that going to be the guiding beacon for what you do, or will we be accommodating where we are at the present time, knowing full well that much of the instruction for some students is certainly not equitable or of the same, at least, quality for all students. With that in mind, let me try to shape a little bit of the state conversation. When we've had meetings with state ed, there certainly has been an acknowledgement that they think they may want to come out with a policy on grading. When that conversation entered, it's almost a hemming and hawing in the sense that they understand absolutely that grading is a local determination. On the other hand, they are very sensitive that a grading policy statewide should at least address the inability of some districts to really come up with solutions that are going to adapt to how inaccessible instruction has been for some students. In addition, the guidance that has come out thus far from state ed, the earliest one that we saw was on March 13th, and that basically was in response to the 3 through 8 testings being postponed. And basically what they said was any student only has to meet the standards that were assessed for the instruction provided during this period of COVID school closure. The other guidance that you saw come out from them was on April 7th, and it was basically in a question 19 of their April 7th email memo regarding Regents exam being not held this year. And in question 19, it was basically a question that said, what should we do with a final grade if we use the Regents exam to determine part of the final grade? And the answer was basically from state ed, we don't really think you should use the Regents as part of a final grade anyway, so we would suggest going back to your school policy and seeing if something needs to be adjusted. So there's an acknowledgement that it is certainly a local decision, but also a true sensitivity that they may have to address something statewide to address an equitable process going forward, especially if we continue with hybrid systems as we go through this challenging time. So I'm anxious to hear the rest of the conversation. And Karen?
Thank you, Cindy. And when you use the term, and New York State uses the term hybrid system, just for clarity, so we all have the same understanding of that, how do they define that? What would that look like, a hybrid system in the fall?
Well, actually, I don't think state ed did define it. What I'm probably moving into are discussions that I've had the privilege of being involved with school districts, where we're thinking in terms of, well, what will school look like reopening? So will it be some in-building time? Will it be a continuation of some remote distance learning? What will that look like?
Thank you. And I think that's the question foremost on our minds too, as educators and for many of us as parents as well. Okay, so we thought we would start by asking our panel members to share the decisions and approaches that their individual districts are using. And I'd like to start with Harry, who's joining us from, well, his district is Clarkstown North. So Harry, maybe you can just share with us how you proceeded in Clarkstown with developing a grading plan that balances, with balance being the key word, the needs of different learners in your school communities. And I will say that as Harry is speaking, one of the resources that he shared with us is the actual document that Clarkstown is using, which I and we found to be very informative, so we thought you might too. So Harry's document is, will be up on your screen, and it's a sample of the resources that will be tagged to the recorded version of the conversation. So Harry, maybe you can share and walk us through that decision and process a little bit.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. For many of us as principals, we feel like maybe work long days, maybe longer days than ever. And one item on my plate a few months ago, rather a month ago, that we had to consider was a grading plan. And what I realized is the grading plan really reflects your philosophy, or Cindy, I think, correctly put it also, community values. And just to give you a background of where my school is located, we are 25 miles north of Times Square, New York City. Rockland County is a suburb of New York City. And my school in particular is a Title I school. And right now we're 20% free and reduced lunch. And we have parents in our community who are the have-it-alls, and we have other people in our community who have nothing. And what illustrated this really clearly for me, I had a student who is a undocumented student from El Salvador. He does work full-time. His mom works full-time. He escaped when he was 13 years old. He rode the beasts from El Salvador through Mexico, and the beasts are the trains. And he would jump from train to train to train to get here finally to New York. And I went to visit him and his family because he didn't have a computer. But what struck me the most is not the fact that he didn't have any technology, but he didn't have any food. His mother was trying to tell me in Spanish, and I can understand some Spanish, that they had no food to eat. And that's what I mean by the have nothings. They have absolutely nothing. So primary on their in their consciousness was not really what do we do for schoolwork, but what do we do simply to eat. So how do I balance then families in that situation? I have a few in that situation versus other parents who have everything, and what they want to know, well, is my son's work going to count? How much is it going to count? Because my son wants to go into an Ivy League school. And somehow we have a barrier, a disparate economic reality between the two. For me, the tipping point was when the Board of Regents, Betty Rosa, the chancellor, and then the interim commissioner issued what really was groundbreaking, that they're not going to offer regents anymore this year. In other words, they're canceled for all intents and purposes. And it won't count against any student in terms of the student's regent's diploma and acquiring a high school diploma. And basically, I describe it as they will do no harm by students. So that's the philosophy I took when I started thinking about a grading plan. It's a philosophy of no harm to students. And it's also, I think, our responsibility as educators to represent the voiceless, to represent the underprivileged, to represent the dispossessed, because we are the only voice they have. As I mentioned to some colleagues in my school district, the people have time to send disgruntled emails to principals or superintendents. They are in a position of privilege to do so. They have the time, they have the technology, they have the bandwidth, they have the health to do that. Other people do not at the moment. So the grading plan here is really a bundle of compromises. On the one hand, you will see that I made sure that it's a catch-all in terms of a letter grade. Let me go back. Well, in my school, March 13th was the last, no, March 12th was the last day. We did not know that school was going to close on March 13th. So many of us have left stuff there. For example, teachers left their papers there. They were ungraded. Students left their notebooks there, whatever it is. So the building wasn't accessed for a long time. And teachers said, well, how can we grade when we don't have our material? It's ungraded. That's a fair question. So the first thing we did is we combined third and fourth quarters together. The other thing we did is we counted the first 2 quarters. We have 4 quarters in our school. We combined the first 2 quarters to count for 70%, and quarters 3 and 4, we collapsed into 1 quarter and count for 30%. Finally, in terms of a letter grade, originally the plan was a 4-3-2-1, and it's not new to those who were our elementary school principals, because they used that kind of system really on report cards, 4-3-2-1. And I thought, why not do the same thing on the high school level? So really the A, B, C, D, F is pretty much 4-3-2-1 from the state level. And when you think about grading the Regents exam, they are put into those buckets of 4-3-2-1. So a letter grade then would make sure that that's no harm to a student. And then what do you do for a number grade? We toyed the idea of a pass-fail, but then what about those students who want to go to college? What do we do then? Some would like to see a number. So you can see that the letter grade A then is converted to, let's say, between 90 to 100. A B is an 80 to an 89. So basically what happens is this. Let's say in the last quarter, which is the combined quarter, I get an A, and my grade then will become on a report card of 100. So if the teacher says, if I'm in a class and gives me a 92, that becomes an A. And then for the report card, the final transcript, the 92, the A becomes a 100. And that's what factors into the GPA. And then if you scroll down, whoever has a screen, if you scroll down, you will see the weights. And for example, the following like in period 3, an A, in other words, a 90 converts to 100, the weighting is 30%, and it's a 30. And then finally, we decided that in terms of a failing grade, the minimum will be a 60. In other words, 59 and less is failing, but we don't anticipate with this many students will be failing. And finally, there is understanding among school administrators that if a family is in a difficult situation, we do exercise certain rights as principals to make sure that we take care of our students. And we're gonna make sure that every family that needs some help, we will help during this time. And basically that's how the plan was formulated, but the philosophy really was, the overarching philosophy, no harm to students, not during this time.
Thank you, Harry. No harm to students, a bundle of compromises, phrases like that really help inform our decision-making. I'll also say that this particular panel was really directed toward you, our secondary leaders, more than our elementary leaders. So many of our elementary folks are not with us here today, but I know they would be happy to hear what they have known all along and what many of us have known too, and that is there are things from the lower grades that could and should translate to secondary. So Harry mentioned using a 1 to 4 kind of grading system that of course is very common in elementary schools. So maybe we will be taking a look at more elementary kinds of practices and having them kind of filter up more than anything in this time of change that we're going to be in for the foreseeable future. Elizabeth, maybe we can ask you to tell us a little bit about the factors that guided your grading decisions at Shenendehowa, and also share with us, if you would, the tool that you created there to help communicate the decisions to your school communities. Because communication, of course, in this process is all important.
Sure, thank you. Much like Harry said, you know, we have similar demographics in a way. We have students, I think most schools do really. We have a range of students. We have the students whose parents I've heard from multiple times worried about how this impacts their ability to get into really high profile universities. And we have some that are just struggling at this time to have their basic needs met. And so we really looked at Q3, and then we looked at Q4 very, very differently. Q3, we had, I don't know, probably 80% of the quarter in school. And students had accumulated quite a few grades while they had access to their teachers. So what we did was extend the marking period slightly and said students have an opportunity to redo, retake, make up, request extra support from their teachers. And the grade couldn't go down from March 13th, but could go up based on the redos, retakes, what they submitted. And since, you know, the large share of Q3 was in school, we did give students a grade for that. And I'm talking secondary level, grades 6 through 12. However, when we looked to Q4, it was very, it's a whole new landscape for us. And much to the same ideas that Harry pointed out, we have families who, you know, both parents were no longer working. We have students who became fully employed. They, you know, they went from their part-time job to now, you know, they were part-time at Walmart. Now they're more than full-time at Walmart because Walmart decided they weren't going to train new employees in this time. And the child said, you know what, I can help mom and dad make rent. So I'm going to do that. We also heard from a number of students that they were lacking sufficient bandwidth. They had Wi-Fi, but all of a sudden, mom, dad, siblings are all on the Wi-Fi together. And it wasn't that they didn't have, but it wasn't sufficient. And many of us have found that in our homes. We know that many students count on teachers to help them stay motivated. And it's sometimes that I walk into the classroom and the teacher says, hey, when are you going to come make this up for me? We were hearing from our students and from our families and from our teachers that lack of daily engagement or every other day engagement was really impacting students' motivation. As much as we would love to say our students are self-directed, and we would love nothing more than to have our students leave our system feeling like, wow, I'm really a self-directed learner, we really in many cases had not been fully preparing students for that reality, because every day they see their teacher, or every other day, and it was, hey, you can come work with me, and what about this? And even just the circulating around the room when students are engaged in the learning. We were also hearing stories that families are overwhelmed, that students are overwhelmed. And so we thought, what is right here? Really drew from what we know about quality grading practices, and I'll throw out the top authors in this. You know, you've got Susan Brookhart and Myron Dweck and Gusky and Wormley, and they're all talking about how do we make sure that our grading really measures student learning. And not so much the behaviors that go along with the learning are really important, but how do we separate those out? How do we report on the behaviors separately? So we ended up coming up with a system, working especially with our Capital Region BOCES local school districts, where students who were attending to their learning, were making progress, would get a grade, evidence of learning. So just EOL, there is evidence that students are moving forward with their learning. And then where students weren't submitting the work, or the work that was submitted didn't yet reach proficiency level, we are calling that NYL, so not yet learned. And we really wanted to make sure that our language was very respectful, particularly where we had students who were struggling to engage for bandwidth and equity issues. We wanted to make sure we had soft language that said they're just not there yet. They might be able to get there, but they're just not there yet. And knowing that that opportunity still exists. We also wanted to make sure that we were communicating this to families. It's not exactly intuitive to families. It's not like they're out reading, Rick Wormley nights or watching Gusky YouTube videos. They know numeric system, right? So we thought, how can we best communicate this to them? So I thought, well, do I really like doing it? Not really, but I sat in my home one probably Sunday morning and made a little video to communicate to parents. What are you going to experience, and what will your children experience, and what's our thinking behind it? Because I felt like they needed to know. Their students, in many cases, were working very hard and wanted to have some sense of where the decision making came from. And so, Karen, I hope that provides kind of an overview of where we are in Shenendehowa. And I can tell you our next thing is to look for what are we going to do in September. As much as I support the evidence of learning and not yet learned for this Q4 experience, I don't know if it's going to be sufficient rolling into September, and we're probably going to need to take another look.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth, because sometimes the way we communicate decisions is certainly as important as the decisions themselves, because misinformation and confusion, especially at a time like this when everybody's stressed out and anxious to begin with, is not a good thing. So I thought it was really important that we put just what that video, what the cover still of that video that was created in Shenendehowa looks like, because perhaps in your districts you want to think about creating something similar just to communicate what your process will be, okay, in terms of end of year grading and similar issues. So we put these still of that up, and I just want you to know that complete video, it's like 3 minutes and 55 seconds. It's simple, it's not overly long, it's not high tech in any real sense of the word, but it's very, very important in terms of here we are, parents, students, and families. Let us explain how this works. Let us explain what evidence of learning looks like, and that's where you'll see the slides and the actual examples. What not yet learned looks like. Here are some examples. That kind of communication, I know when I was working in a school, was tremendously valuable and important. I would have very much appreciated having access to great resources like the one Harry shared, and like the sample video that is also available to you. These are, 50 minutes, 60 minutes that we have. These are short moments in time on complex topics. We scratch the surface, but we're happy that we can provide resources that will kind of take you to the next step if you'd like to use them in some way or if they're helpful. So Elizabeth, thank you very much for that. I am going to take a minute to share a question that I'm seeing on the chat. Joe submitted a question that has to do with IDEA and some inequities around special education with regard to grading. Today we'll give it some attention right now, and we'll have Joe ask that question, but I'm just going to tell everybody also that on May 28th, our next panel is ready to go. It's on questions around provision of IEPs, special education, grading at the end of the year, questions going into next year, and we will be addressing questions just like this. So Joe, maybe you can just kind of share the nugget of that question with our panel, and someone might like to touch on it.
Sure. I just know that, my superintendent, is very wary of the whole hard grading during this time because with our special ed kids and with the inequities of our have and have not kids, he's just worried that if we fail kids and if we, we're just opening up the district and the school to liability. And he's very wary of, failing kids at this time, just because we haven't had any direction from the state on these matters. And I've heard like the two grading policies of districts so far, and it seems like, people are still holding kids accountable. But I just was thinking that and seeing if other people have the same concerns that we have.
Would any of our panelists like to comment? Felicia, this is a great segue actually to perhaps what you're going to share with us next about the inequities that have really been exposed and brought to the fore during this experience. So maybe you can respond a little bit to Joe's question.
Well, in terms of special education, we are still actually in negotiations with what it is that our grading policy is going to look like. We receive a lot. Let me just tell you a little bit about Brentwood if you guys aren't aware of what my district looks like. We're the largest suburban district in New York State. I have 20,000 students, and we're very much like an inner city district. We're located in Suffolk County. My particular school, West Middle School, is grades 6 through 8. And we serve a population, mine alone, of almost 1,000 students from culturally diverse backgrounds. I have to share with you that I have about 80 to 84% of my students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. I currently have in my building alone 31 homeless students that we are aware of. And we in Brentwood are considered a COVID-19 hotspot. So Suffolk County is already considered a New York State hotspot, but Brentwood is particularly hot with the COVID-19 virus. With that being said, I know that the question that was proposed for me was what distance learning is highlighted with response to inequities in the provision of access of resources. Well, the challenges in Brentwood that have been highlighted during the COVID crisis has been, much like my colleagues have shared with you, survival is the priority. I have students who have lack of health care, lack of food, lack of a safe location. I know that internationally there has been a rise in domestic violence. It has also been evident in my district, and I have had to deal with parents, moms fleeing their home, leaving the state, leaving the county, and not forwarding their location out of fear for sharing with us that information will get back to the abusive spouse or significant other. Food is an issue. We've had kids who contacted us and said, I'm hungry. We have been focusing on a food pantry. We have been focusing on resources, individuals who are incapable of leaving their homes to get to those resources. There's a partnership right now with Lyft where they can get someone to come and take them to a local pantry to pick up the food. Those are our priorities. It's not that the mandates that are coming down from the state are not a priority. It's that if I don't have a kid who has food or technology, which I'm going to get to next, that the educational piece is a moot point because survival kicks in first. We do have partnerships with programs such as the Strong program, which I believe Sergio Argueta I saw on this call, and they have been absolutely amazing about helping us to give resources to our children. They've gone directly to homes where there has been COVID-19 positive and dropped it off outside and left it. As far as special education, our CSEs are still taking place remotely. Anything that we can provide in terms of accommodations is still being provided within reason and within the state guidelines. Grading wise, let me just tell you about the district grading policy as it was communicated to us by our superintendent. As of right now, the elementary level grading says elementary teachers will continue with their holistic approach of grading students. Teachers will fill in elementary standards-based report cards connecting students' past performance to their current engagement in learning activities. For the secondary level, again, no final exams will be administered. Students will receive a pass-fail in all courses for the 4th marking period. However, they will receive a numerical final grade. So that's kind of appeased those parents who, like Harry and Elizabeth said, they wanted the grades for their children. That's kind of been the olive branch, for lack of a better way to put it. And that final grade is going to be based on the numerical average of the first 3 quarters. We actually gave grades in our 3rd quarter. Teachers will have an opportunity to override students' averages to add points only to students who have done exemplary work during our learn at home period. It has absolutely been our philosophy not to punish any students for not completing any work during the at-home distance learning plan. And that's something that we intend to continue with as our philosophy.
Thank you. So we hear some of Harry's earlier themes of, first of all, doing no harm. We can add points, but not take them away. Bundles of compromises, those themes are common. Would anyone else on our panel like to comment about any of the points that have been made so far, or Joe's question?
Well, in terms of special education, part of the reason why we counted 3rd and 4th quarter combined 30% only was because of our special education and E&L students. Having supports during the school year with, let's say, teaching assistants, paraprofessionals, is not the same as doing that remotely. We recognize that, which is one reason why we had to acknowledge that students in more precarious positions, whether it's economic or whether it's because of learning ability, we had to take that into account. So we purposely did the 70-30 split because of these students. We took that into consideration.
Thank you. We could cycle back to Elizabeth for a minute. A question that's kind of popping up is that there's a sense that component districts of Capital Region BOCES were, helped develop those EOL and NYL approaches that Shen is using and communicating really effectively. Do you know about how many districts Capital Region are using similar systems? Is it widespread?
I don't know the exact percent, but I know that there are many of us. We did have a grading committee, and I want to give a shout out to the leadership of Cap Region BOCES. They have done a phenomenal job bringing the component schools together to talk about these really challenging issues. It really helps when your neighbor to the north and your neighbor to the south are going to take similar approaches or minimally agree on similar philosophies. And I can't say that every single district is using EOL, NYL, but several are. But the ones who aren't had a similar philosophy and maybe did a one-off, maybe they had a week before we kind of settled on that type of grading approach, had already published to their families what they were going to do. But for the most part, we have worked as a unit very successfully. And I think it has, it's also been good because we've been able to push back on each other's thinking.
Sure.
And we too are not using Q4 in the average, very concerned about the equity issues. And again, when I say something like that, it's not to criticize anybody who is. We are all doing the absolute best we can Nobody intends to cause harm through any of the grading structures right now, but we did feel much more confident knowing that students received their services, be it special needs students or our English language learners, that they had them when they were in person. And so our students' GPAs for grades 9 through 12 will be just the average of quarters 1 through 3, and quarter 4 can enhance but cannot hurt should teachers choose to use it in that way.
Thank you. So it's probably fair to say that the kind of collaboration and sharing that Elizabeth just shared with us, Capital Region BOCES, bringing districts together, many are speaking this common language, that kind of collaboration and sharing has been vitally important forever. But now, and in whatever is facing us ahead, it's going to become more vital than ever. So, you know, the more sharing of ideas and expertise and thoughts and approaches, the better. And we hope that's one thing we can do through conversations like this. Cindy.
Sure, and I think there was a dimension too to Joe's question originally about a kind of a feeling of liability. And one of the things I noticed in all 3 of our presenters and school districts is how well they've documented not only their grading structure, but the philosophy behind it. That is also comes out very, very strongly when you read some of the guidance out of the U.S. Department of Ed in regard to special education. There's 1,000 things we'll be talking about, but even when it comes to timelines, it's what have you documented, what kind of conversations have you been in with the parents, and what kind of agreements can you come to? So, you know, combining the 2, at least major pieces of guidance that I've seen, I would say that that's a very wise approach to whatever structure you come up with for grading. Just make sure that it's documented, that it's well thought out, and what were the premises behind it, and why, if any, did it, you know, diverge from your already in place Board of Education policy.
Thank you very much. And once again, we hope many of you can tune in on the 28th, because we are going to go deeper into that very issue of documentation. Before we kind of look forward more than where we are right now, I'm going to ask R. Keeler, I'm sorry if you don't know your first name, to ask his question of the panel. It's a hard question. So Mr. and Ms. Keeler, are you there to ask your question?
I am.
Okay.
Do this so people.
What's your first name?
Dick Keeler, Rich Keeler.
Hi, Rich. Nice to meet you.
So the question I have is, you know, we have a lot of students who performed well up until the school closure. They're struggling now, and they're going to be okay. They're going to make it through. I have a lot of students who were doing poorly up until the point of school closure and continue to not engage in the at-home learning process, because this model definitely isn't for everybody, that's for sure. What are districts doing about those students? I mean, it's easy to move a kid on who is performing well up until the point of the closure. You can justify that. But when you have a kid who was performing significantly low and really not demonstrating a good understanding of the standards up until the point of the closing, you know, are districts justifying passing those students, or is there the reality of the fact that, similar to any other year, there are going to be students who are going to fail?
Thank you. Maybe someone on our panel would like to respond to that. I'm looking, Tasha just kind of contributed a comment. Our plan is to look at these students on a case-to-case basis. Harry, can you give us any other insight on the question Rich just posed?
Sure. We have a few students in that situation. They were failing quarters 1 and 2, and they continue failing through quarter 3 and 4 in distance learning. And no matter how much our counselors try, our assistant principals try, our teachers try to get in touch with them, to modify assignments, they still don't do anything. And we're going to have to look at these students and see where they are, see if there's anything we could do to help them through the summer months. And even if we go through next year, that we may have to extend their career, so to speak, if they're seniors particularly, and get them through as, you know, as a 5th-year senior if we need to. But we will definitely not try to fail them. If anything, we would try to provide them with opportunities to somehow make up the work and pass.
Thank you. And Meredith also contributed. We're anticipating that students will need to access some form of summer school option as well. So that's something that's at least on the radar now.
My concern with the summer school piece, and I guess we're going to find out from the governor if that's even going to be an option. If we have to do a virtual summer school, I don't know if it's going to benefit these students because it's never going to be any easier, for lack of better terms, than it is right now for them to earn this course credit. I don't see them engaging in a virtual summer school program either. These are the kids that need that interaction, they need that coddling, they need that support that we can provide them within the brick and mortar of our buildings. They're not getting it at home, and if we're not able to do summer school, I don't know what other options are out there for them in terms of getting them through other than them repeating courses next year.
Thank you. I think, you're hitting on the fact that there are more questions than answers right now around all of that. Maybe we can kind of take a minute and just kind of look ahead and look forward and focus on what learning is coming out of the experience that we've been in. I think, everyone, all teachers and leaders all over New York State, really, the efforts were valiant, and we don't use that word lightly, back in March, to provide a semblance of remote learning during an unexpected, unprecedented emergency. And this is emergency learning. A lot of points are being made recently that what we're seeing right now is not true remote learning or distance learning or hybrid learning. It's emergency learning that was put together due to an unprecedented crisis that came up very quickly. So there's a tremendous amount, I think we all agree that we're learning from this. So maybe I could just kind of ask our panel and some of you to contribute some thoughts about looking ahead. How has this time helped you kind of reflect on grading practices in general? What do you see as some of the challenges and solutions to moving toward more progressive grading practices going forward, which has been a very tough nut to crack for years in school districts where there is some wide agreement that traditional grading systems are not working, but when it comes to moving towards some kind of change, there are tremendous complexities, pushback, etc. So maybe I could ask the panel to share some thoughts about looking forward. Is there something better down the road?
So if I could just make a quick comment, one of the things that I'm happy to notice with teachers is that obviously there is a very wide array of philosophies that they have surrounding grading. We do attempt to implement grading policies. However, there is still room for subjectivity in many of those cases. I think that if there is a silver lining, this emergency learning program that you've talked about has allowed people to look at things through a different lens and perhaps be open to more changes that could take place regarding those grading policies and prioritizing what really makes the most sense and what matters most. So I think in that, I hope that kind of addresses what you asked, but there is somewhat of a silver lining.
Thank you.
I would add to that, Felicia. I agree that there's so much more that we can do. On the call today, I see Sarah Chaffee. She's one of our administrators in Shenandoah, and she's in charge of world language. And it was very interesting when all of a sudden we weren't going to be administering the proficiency exams, that we needed to go back and look at student grades. And there's a big difference between a student who would pass, what we call the checkpoint A, the local proficiency exam, versus a student who would have a very high grade or even a lower grade. We saw more students who were failing pass because it's a proficiency exam. It's not an AP level exam, it's a proficiency exam. And I thought very wisely, she said, I'm going to need to have a conversation with my teachers to say, go back through your grade book and strip away, please, all the other things that have contributed to your students' grades over the course of this year that are not indicators of proficiency or their learning of the language, but are better indicators of class participation, behavior, effort, and there are a host of those things in our grades. And speaking about practices that are more progressive going forward, it's not to say effort isn't important, it's very important. Behavior is very important, but they're it can't be conflated with grades, and grades should be a measure of proficiency. And so when we look forward, it's how do we come up with a reporting system that communicates how important participation and effort and behaviors are, and still keep a pure mark of proficiency, which is truly how did students learn, how did they do when they were trying to learn the standard? And we have so much room for that. And I think this crisis really does tease out the need and speak to all of us about the need to improve our grading practices.
Thank you. Sarah, would you like to comment on that? Not sure she heard me.
I did. Sorry. I'm kind of
That's okay. There you are.
changes between Zoom and Google, and I'm.
We know.
So no, I don't add what Dr. Wood said is exactly what happened. We had to take sort of forcing us to take a really hard look at what are we asking our students to do in our course versus what students are being asked to do on a minimal proficiency exam. And it was a really interesting conversation. And I didn't really know which way, teachers were going to land with that. But ultimately it came down to sort of removing all kinds of compliance grades, or, you can call them, or completion grades, and really focusing on what students are able to do in the absence of a test that will measure that. So it actually was not as difficult of a conversation as I thought it was going to be when we really looked at the numbers of kids who were passing the proficiency exam versus passing the course. And the number, that discrepancy was pretty large. And so that's definitely going to drive some conversations moving forward with whatever, next year and subsequent years look like.
So would you include counting homework completion as a large part of a student's academic average as part of what teachers might look to, quote, strip away in looking for proficiency?
So that's a really loaded question, Karen.
Yes, it is.
That might
It's
be
a hard
for
one.
another day, but it's a really good question. But
Yes.
So a nice short answer would be, I think it depends on the teacher a lot of the time. I think it also depends on what the homework is. So if that homework is, based on I did it, I made the effort and I submitted it, versus this homework is really going to help the teacher understand if a child has met a benchmark or understands a skill or is able to, understand a concept. So it really does get down to that sort of granular level when we're talking about that. And I would also add, I know I have some of my own world language and E&L colleagues on this call as well. We're having those conversations at the checkpoint B level at the high school as well. We're sort of saying, when we have, especially those kids on the cusp who we're trying to figure out, are they going to earn the course credit or not? And maybe they have a 64 or a 63 or a 62 right now. Once we strip away all those grades and we look just at the assessments that actually measure skill, have students met the course requirements and have they met those, those learning standards? And if they have, then they should be passing. So.
Thank you. So putting kind of the always a hot potato of homework off to the side, which could enter into this conversation, because this is such an important point, can you just give us a quick example of a place where there was kind of general agreement among your world language teachers of the kinds of things that could be kind of stripped away in this effort to identify proficiency? What kinds of things were they able to identify?
So we looked at, and are still frankly looking at, because at the checkpoint B level, checkpoint A level teachers, we really spoke more globally. Because it's slightly different, and what it allows a student to earn in terms of graduation is slightly different than, what a student at the checkpoint B level can earn. So we're still having the conversations at checkpoint B. And to go back to what someone said in the chat, I think it was Tasha, we are going case by case. We are going student by student with each of our teachers to say, how close is this student? What are we stripping away in your curriculum? And what are we looking at to determine if the student has met those learning outcomes? And frankly, that's what State Ed is saying in their language. They're saying they want to know if students have met, the standard or the skills that are taught in the course. So homework is probably the biggest one. We've also even looked at components of projects, if you will. So if a component of a project is you turned it in by this date, so you got these points, you know, we strip that, we talked about stripping that away as well. And really focusing on, frankly, even in some of the assessments, we can go back and look at assessments and say, in this assessment, what is really getting to the heart of the skill or the standard versus, you know, extraneous questions. And it's a little bit hard to even share that, because in sharing that, there's a vulnerability in admitting that there are grades out there, or, you know, or completion or compliance grades that really probably should not be part of a student's grade. So that's why I've been saying, and I know Dr. Wood has heard me say this 100 times, you know, if we move through this, we don't take these lessons with us in terms of how we grade students and how we assess students, and we've missed a really big opportunity. So
Thank you.
that was probably more winded than you wanted it to be, Karen, but.
Not at all. Thank you. That was very valuable. Thank you for sharing some examples with us. I would like to get in a couple of nuts and bolts questions with maybe just some quick responses if we can. One of them, just lost it here. A number of ELL/SIFE students who have recently entered and do not have grades for quarters 1 through 3. Any thoughts? I don't know, Harry, if you encountered
Sure.
that in your
I mean,
district.
that's going to depend. Is it all 3 quarters? Is it
Right.
1 quarter? Is it 2 quarters? It's going to depend. That we look on a case-by-case basis, without a doubt. Like the student I went to visit in his home, he's a SIFE student. So we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Another quick one, what people are doing with BOCE, CTE/CDOS grades and requirements? Anybody encountering that who would like to share? Okay, we'll kind of put that one on hold. Cindy, I think you had a comment.
Just because the conversation that we just had with Sarah and with Elizabeth, I think one thing that I see too in the conversations that I'm seeing at a statewide level is the urging of, and I can't say that this is it's majority of the conversations, but you're beginning to see come in, what are the super standards? State Ed, can you tell us, can you too strip down some of the standards for our bigger content areas? As we know that we're not getting through this, we need to begin to, as we begin to look at those, what was assessed, what standards do we really need to assess? I think, and a conversation I heard back in State Ed's response was a real admission that, yeah, we might have to begin to look at that. So I think that's an interesting, that takes us to another whole conversation.
Absolutely.
It sure does. I love that you brought that up, Cindy, because it's one of the conversations that our teachers had within the district. Moving forward now, where do we want to focus all of our energies and strengths on what we want kids to be able to know by the end of the year? Clearly, they weren't going to be able to continue at the same pace for learning as we were when we were coming to school every day. And clearly, people were going to be left behind due to lack of resources, but they did work collaboratively in the district to come up with what we deemed those super goals.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to begin to conclude today's conversation. I would really like to thank everyone on our panel, as well as Michelle Hebert, Susan Jaronsky at SAANYS, who helped bring this all together. And I would like to just share with you some things to be looking for. Thursday, May 28th, 3 p.m. focuses on provision of special education services during closure and the resulting impact of questions that we can anticipate going forward. Details will be posted soon on the SAANYS website for that one. We have a SAANYS special event coming up next week. Thank you, Michelle, for putting up the information on that. It is May 19th at 2 p.m. George Kouros will be with us. Kouros on COVID, which you won't want to miss. And then in June, looking ahead a little bit, it's almost June. We are planning a 3-part SAANYS Connect series, reopening school, planning and vision. It's going to be a series by and for New York State leaders, you. And we're going to break down the whole topic of the sprawling topic of considerations around reopening to kind of different considerations over 3 sessions. So we hope you'll tune in for that. And for now, just continue to stay safe, and thank you all for doing this hard and important work for our students and our school communities. One more reminder, you'll find a recorded version of this conversation and the resources and more than the ones we've just looked at during this conversation on our website, tagged to the recording. And please feel free to reach out to me at any time, kbronson at KBRONSON at SAANYS.org with any questions, suggestions. We'd love feedback for future SAANYS Connect panels. So with that, thank you once again, everyone, and everyone have a good evening.